Okay, so we're back and we're still kind of polishing off the remainder of the feet. So let's go ahead and jump back into edit mode. Now we've got everything kind of nicely closed off. If we wanted to make a sole on the underside of the boot, really at this point it would just be a simple extrusion, or at least that's how we would begin. So let's do that. Let me jump over to faces. Just grab all these real quick. Back over to the side view. And we can scale down, just throw this into Z, and yeah, we could just type 0 and completely flatten that out if we want to. It's not really a bad idea. And then I'll just do one extrusion that pushes us straight down to the ground. Now, of course, that's going to have a couple of issues. It won't be perfectly flat. You will have to sort of ask yourself, though. I mean, is that flat enough for your particular application? What I mean is, like, if you want to model in an indentation between the foot and the actual sole of the boot, there's no reason why you can't go ahead and do that. However, it would be really easy to create a bump or normal map texture that defined a nice crease right there, and you wouldn't have to worry about it at the modeling stage if you didn't want to. So if you remember that things like indentations and all that can be added at texture time, you don't have to worry so much about them here. All you really have to worry about is transitions in shape. Now, on that note, we do have kind of an odd transition here, like the bottom of the sole is just a little bit too round. Couple of ways to deal with that. Probably the easiest that I can think of off the top of my head would be switching over to edges, grabbing all of the edges around the shoe, and just doing a very, very small bevel. So just go to W, hit bevel, and then I would pull my distance really, really far down, and you can see that that just tightens everything up. Now, at this point, we could go ahead and do a little bit of adjustment to the shape of the the boot and the foot. And to do that, I am going to grab, actually, let me undo. I'm going to actually undo back until I haven't done that bevel yet, just to give me fewer edges to play with while I tweak. Just a personal preference thing. Let me hit G, and I'm going to slide this in a little ways. And then I'm going to switch over to Vertices and pull this out. So I'm just creating a little bit more of that form-fitting look all the way back to the heel, because I feel like we were missing it. So we'll slide that back.
That's good, actually, because it gives me a chance to ask something about the bevel operation.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that I wondered whether the even or distance settings would actually be useful in this case. The checkboxes in the bevel, once you've done it.
Possibly, but I mean,
It's just they're settings where I'm struggling to know what they mean exactly by them, because I've never noticed them make a huge amount of difference to anything.
You know, and to be perfectly honest, neither have I. I really do get that beta impression from the bevel tool still, that it's still got a little ways to go.
You must be thankful for what you've been given.
Yes, yes, something like that. And I mean, we could leave that little flattening as we get toward the back there, or you could round it out. I don't really see a problem with it. I mean, and you also, if you want, well, you can see we've got a little bit of adjustment we've got to make here, so let's go ahead and do that. But if you wanted to do some indentation, I mean, I suppose you could.
Well, things like boots and these things, and particularly when you're working from a drawing which is basically a proportion drawing like this, rather than a very detailed character concept, is that you've got the freedom to add straps and buckles,
you can have all kinds of fun.
You can go wild with these things. It's great.
And just in terms of a modeling exercise, I would highly, highly recommend that folks following along with this take some liberties of that nature with this character, and don't let yourself get too caught up in just modeling what I've modeled and calling it done. For the sake of having a class, I've got to keep things relatively simple, but you're bound by no such restrictions. So, I mean, you can just experiment. You're not going to break it. And, you know, even if you think you are, well, just do a quick save as before you try anything, and it doesn't really matter what you do at that point. Oh, moved in the wrong direction.
To me, that's the only real major day-to-day difference nowadays with certainly the modelling side of Blender compared to Max, which I've spent the most time with otherwise, is just it's the polishedness of it, which is, I think, you know, that's a function of it being based of open sourceness to an extent.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. I
Well,
agree.
just then I was thinking one of the things that I do actually miss from Max is the fact that you always get that dialogue saying, "Do you want me to hold a copy of this scene because you may well be about to blow your model up."
Yeah, and you know, I feel like that was, you know, that sort of dialogue was put in there because so many modelers have been like, "Oh, you know what? You're right. I should have saved, like, you know, 20 minutes ago and I didn't."
Well, and also I don't know. Do you know when roughly they brought that in, or was it there when they bought it from whoever they bought it from? Because I mean, back in those days, you know, how many undos did you have?
Well, it was discrete back when, but I think they were still the same thing. I think it was all part of Autodesk. They just called it discrete.
Right. I'm just thinking in terms of
Like,
you know, nowadays you've got nearly infinite
Yeah.
undos on things like Max and Maya, whereas
You didn't
back
always
in the
used
day
to.
it'd probably be like Blender where you've got a maximum of I've got a maximum of 64. I don't know if that's machine dependent or
Yeah. No, but if memory serves, it was technically always Autodesk, but like where now we have Autodesk, was it Design and Entertainment? I don't remember what they call that division, which is currently in charge of Max and Maya, but they used to just call that discrete.
Ooh, something that I noticed was actually in a TechSpot article either yesterday or today.
Uh-huh.
Somebody noticed on Steam, well, not actually on the PC client, but on the one of the mobile, I think it might be the iOS Steam, some app of some sort. I'm so connected.
Yeah, I can tell.
In their categorization,
Mm-hmm.
there's categories for various types of application, like modeling, software development.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks like they might be. I would imagine that's probably in preparation for this new anyone can upload and get voted on system that they're bringing in for content. But that'd be interesting.
Indeed.
Get Blender updates via Steam, for instance.
Yeah, that would be actually kind of nice, because then I wouldn't have to
That'd
worry
be great.
so much about updating it, ever. When's the last time you updated Blender? Oh, I don't know. It just does it.
You see, people, I'm currently taking the place of... Well, it does seem to be a... one of those tropes that is true of... it's usually heavy rock and metal that people listen to.
Oh, yeah. I don't usually. Like, when I'm working, I usually listen to electronica, something non-lyrical. That's my one stipulation. It can't be very lyrical, because I find lyrics and speaking to be distracting. I find myself listening to the lyrics and trying to figure out what the song is about, and not doing whatever it is I need to be doing right now.
The whole concept of even having music on while I'm doing things, because everything I've always done, I haven't been able to.
Right.
It's just, for ages, I didn't even notice that I was kind of basically sitting in silence all day.
Yeah.
Just, I thought, I could put some music on. But for me, it's generally like Simon and Garfunkel or the Verdi Requiem or something.
Okay. Well, at this point, we've now got... we got vertices that are more or less right in the center of our ankle bone because of the way this is going. Now, I could put the vertices that have the pole directly in that location. I'm not going to stress that. Not in this particular instance, anyway. But I'll pull these vertices up and I'll let them make sort of a curve here at the front of the foot. And we can start use it. Let's just try using the detail we have. I'll probably end up having to add another loop of edges directly underneath this to sort of help pinch that in. I just wanted to mention to Vrex, I've never listened to Vangelis outside of the Blade Runner soundtrack.
It all sounds like the Blade Runner soundtrack.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, that's not a bad thing.
No, that's not a bad thing, but...
That's probably a bit harsh, actually.
Well, I mean...
I shall caveat that.
Yeah.
We're recording this.
Yeah. But, you know, if that's what they sound like, then that's what they sound like.
You know what, I heard a bit on TV the other day? Equinox by Jean-Michel Jarre. Which is another flashback to my childhood. There were like a maximum of about 6 cassette tapes in my sort of memory of my childhood, and they're of such disparate grouping of musical tastes. I can't quite...
Okay, now what I'm going to do is just kind of take a look at the smooth for a little while and just do some shapes that are generally pleasing. So, you know, play with the shape of the heel a little bit. A little pull and a little tweak there I think will make all the difference. We can pull the heel out here, but here at the instep we can kind of push it in just a little ways.
I'm just picturing all the 3D Buzz students who are going to be hanging around ladies' shoe shops for the next week.
Could happen. I've seen that sort of thing happen before. Okay, and with that, I think we've got a pretty nice foot laid out. So, maybe I could take these guys. It's a little bit too form-footing. It's like that sole was just mal-designed, so let's pull that out a little ways. Pull these out a little ways. There we go. So that looks a little better. And I think we've got something there. So I think at this point we're ready to go ahead and start working our way up the leg. Now in this particular case, we've got some changes that I want to make to the lower part of the torso before we get too much further along. So let me go ahead and give everybody a second to catch up if they need it. Okay, so now we're going to continue. Now, honestly, I was never really super satisfied with what we had done here with the lower part of the torso and how that had become the hips and all that. And rather than try to take an edge count and reconcile it, which here we have 15 edges. And of course here we should have about 8. And so we've got, you know, roughly half as many edges we'd have to be stepping down to. I just feel like we could probably simplify our geometry here and get something that would flow just as nicely, if not significantly better. And I never did like how we had all these edges kind of coming to points. I mean, it's just there's a lot of things that have irritated me that I guess at the time they made sense, or I was maybe not just completely in tune with the model, and a second attempt would have been worthwhile. So what I'm going to do is punch a lot of this stuff out. And, well, I guess in effect it's kind of like, let's just do that again. So if I run this all the way across the top of the hip, get all this out, and everything down here in the groin area as well. Just let's see how far back we have to go until I'm kind of happy. That'll probably work. Let's just nuke all this. Okay, so that gets us down to this point. Let's jump back over to the front view. I mean, it's lining up reasonably well. Let's switch over to vertices. Pull these down a little bit. We've got... See if we have any kind of extra edges that we don't particularly need right now. I feel like there's at least 1 or 2 that we could probably live without. For instance, we could probably get away for now, just to keep things nice and simple, with taking out this edge. So I'm just going to go ahead and dissolve that, and go ahead and dissolve the verts with it, and then get the rest of the detail back out by way of edge slides and don't do that. Don't do an extrusion. By way of edge slides and just waggling some vertices until I get what I want. So let's Control E and edge slide this out. And I really kind of wish that would just activate the tool sometimes and not do what it does, but you know.
It is about the only time I generally see that cursor. It's when I accidentally right-click and it appears in the middle of the screen.
Yeah. Well, what I was talking about was when you hit Shift-R, I wish it didn't just repeat exactly what you did with the last command, so much as just re-invoke that command. So, like, if I didn't...
It's a bit like the Control F in Photoshop.
Yeah.
It's all very well at repeating the last thing, but it should at least give you the options dialogue again.
Right.
Yep, I'm with you on that.
Let's see how this is looking in a smooth form. It's like we're getting a little bit of the shape adjusted here, but we're not spending a great deal of time getting, you know, like the perfect bust line here. We don't really need to. Oh, but I do need to make sure I don't do too much changing around to the center line when I don't have clipping on. So I'm going to turn clipping back on and close these back up. Easy little pitfall to fall into.
One little cheat that I picked up from somewhere for the Bustle area is to start with a very, very low res, essentially a one-time smoothed cube.
Right.
Chop it in half, get rid of the back, and use that as a former, essentially, to work from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, we can slide this out a little bit. This can come halfway across the stomach. We didn't really need as much detail as we had. So if you're watching a video on the legs and like, oh, why is he working on the bust line? Well, it's because everything's kind of interconnected here, and since we removed this edge, we've got to adjust the flow of that edge that we removed. So that's what we're doing. Not that I really think anybody had asked that, and I'm really not super glad about this. I feel like this needs to be kind of brought in a little bit. And it's still not perfect, but we can come back to that. We can have like tweaking sessions over all of that kind of stuff. So let's pull this over. Now, here's the deal. If we end up deciding we want a little more detail back into the back, the way I would probably go about it at this stage would be to run it right up into the hole where the head's going to be, because I'm sure we can find a way to use that anyway, and not go right up the front and down the back, because I think this is probably about as much detail as we really need down the front of the character right now anyway. At this point, it would just be a question of adjusting and tweaking some of that detail to get the exact shape that we're looking for. But if at some point I was like, well, the back needs this or the back needs that, I would just run it straight up the back and into the head hole. Okay. Now a couple of other things. Let's jump over to edges and let's get rid of these guys. Dissolve, nuke the appropriate vertices as well. We're not going to be getting rid of these. They're running down the arm and doing too much work. But we can kind of start to smooth things out a little bit. Double check front view, kind of see how things are going. Not too bad, really. And what we get to see of the side view, which I realize isn't too much, Okay, so I think that's working a little bit more in our favor at this stage. So let's line these back up. Let's do a 2-edge extrusion. This basically is going to connect down here to the front of the groin region.
I think
yes?
you might have an extra vertex in there.
Yeah?
On one of those 2 edges. Possibly not. It looked like, when it highlighted, it looked like
kind of bent or something?
It looked like it only highlighted half it. It might have been the frame rate. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Alright, so let's extrude this back and jump over to the side view again. We'll run this. I mean, really, that's about where I want it to be, is about halfway down for that first one. And then go the rest of the way down from there, and let's just clean up some verts, and then we'll do an attachment. So back over to edges, and just hit F and F. Now, if I switch over to edges for just a moment, that's a total of 9 edges, and obviously we're going to need some more of that to get the detail that we're looking for. But my goal is to not translate any more of that down the leg than we absolutely must.
See, if it was me, I'd actually just start working my way up from the ankle.
And we're going to have to. But I wanted to get this part kind of cleaned up.
Going around the meat of it, because then I'd sort of have sort of I tend to sort of have an idea of how many verts I'm aiming for and gradually lose edges on the way up. I'm just totally failing at stringing sentences together tonight.
A little bit. It's okay though.
I mean, even more than
Yeah, even more than usual
for me.
Yeah. It's cool though. We still love you. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and bring the hip up anyway, because we're gonna need to sooner or later. So the easiest way to do this is very much like what we did with the hands in at least a couple of videos ago. Let's just do an extrusion. Pull it up to here, and the simple way would be just give this a little bit of rotation. Let's just scale it up and move it so that it sort of fits here in the thigh area. Go to the side view and do a little bit of the same thing. And let's make sure we can see through. We'll scale it down in this direction quite a bit. That's looking pretty good. And completely ignore the fact that it looks kind of ridiculous. But I mean, we're starting to see some potential here, I think. Now, to make this this connection start to happen, we have 2 of these little corners, one here and one here. I feel like we could probably do an extrusion and some reattachment to those points, but let me see.
What?
Yes?
Sorry, backseat modeling again.
No, it's okay. You're just a floating what? You might as well finish thought now.
I'm just thinking if you were to bring the knee, if you were to do the knee like you did the toe,
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about before.
Sure, and you can use that
add
to
you 2 extra edges,
right,
upwards only.
Right, it's just a way to terminate some edges, and I'm sure we'll have to explore that, or something along those lines before we get finished here. Make it out of ortho so I can see where I'm going.
I'm glad you knew what I meant, because I was trying to work out how to explain that.
Yeah.
A lot of this is just trying to explain it without drawing anything.
The funny thing is, I mean, you'll just never end up doing the same model twice. This model in the Thursday class to me looks just very, very different.
They look completely different.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the. How did the arms and hands go?
Now the arms and hands, I think, ended up pretty much exactly the same. But there's some decisions that were made at the lower part of the torso that just were a bit different at the time. The same theme. I mean, everything in terms of technique is still there. It's just the actual flow of the vertices is just a little bit different.
See, my thing is there has to be fundamentally an optimal way of just spreading vertices over a human body.
Do you know who's found that yet?
Well, I haven't had the time.
Oh. Okay.
It's kind of, you look at it, you start at the fingertips and the toe tips and any other tips that are gender specific and work outwards from there.
Right.
And just, so if you're working in eights around the fingers, then you're going to have those coming together in a certain way. It should be possible to come up with a proto mesh.
Alright, now I'm going to add an edge here in the middle of the knee and just kind of start working this in a bit. And I'll get that position right about here. I'm going to rotate it forward slightly, scale it out. Okay. Now, let's see. Now, just to kind of throw everybody a quick bone as to what Gavin was sort of talking about earlier, if you're a bit curious, there's a couple of ways to go about what he was discussing. Here's one way that I quite like, mostly because I get to delete stuff, and that always makes me a little excited. So we could grab these guys, switch over to faces, and grab this band of faces, and essentially just nuke them. So we're building the leg now. We've built an intermediate part that'll go in between the two. So now we'll just build out a thigh, and our new sort of attachment point will be down here at the knee, which is an interesting way to work. So just to count up our edges one more time, we've got 10 edges around the leg right now, and we have 8 edges here, so we need 2 more. So I'm going to get those edges. Well, I could probably get them from anywhere, but it would probably make more sense to kind of get them toward the front of the leg based on what we were talking about a moment ago. So let's do that. Let me show the rest of the mesh. Let me hit Control R, and I'm going to add one edge here, and I'll just add another edge here, and then I'm just going to do a lot of sort of averaging of vertices. But since we've only got, a top and a bottom edge loop, it doesn't really take that long to do.
Yeah, there is nothing worse than that moment when you subdivide it down and then you realize that you've got to do some repetitive operation that you've now got to do to 64 different vertices
instead of just, what, 16? Yeah. Alright, now if we double check this, we have 10 and 10. So we can go ahead and start getting these connected and then reconcile the shape. Meaning build it first, then tweak it. So let's switch over to edges, edge, edge, and just hit F. So I'll just be tapping F a lot for just a moment. Oh yeah, that's going to need some serious adjustment. But the flip side is it does kind of tell you which direction you need to move things in. Alright, and for those of you who ever get frustrated and you're like, oh, my model just looks like poo and I want to quit, here's why you don't quit. Because sometimes your model just looks like poo. Let's check that side view. I know it's going to look absolutely terrible, but... And that's going to need to come out. These are going to need to come out to aid in the overall flow. That will need to go back. we'll probably end up needing to run some edges along through here. Maybe, I don't know. Just in terms of getting the glutes shaped in a little more naturally. But for now, let me just focus on these edge flows running down the hips and the thighs. Front view real quick. And this all looks just terrible. I'm wondering about, well, before I get too carried away.
With the smooth on.
Yeah, we can see with the smooth on. I mean, we just kind of have a little bit too much flattening out in here. I'm just going to try to readjust some of the detail we've got to fix that up a little bit.
Actually, I think that's already looking a lot smoother than it was before.
Oh, indeed. For sure.
And again, you know you're an ortho.
I do. But, I mean, sometimes it just doesn't bother me as much as it does in others. I just get so tired of reaching over and hitting 5 that I don't think about it. And I know, I could switch it to auto perspective, and that would solve that problem. I just haven't. So, my main issue right here is just that I don't feel like we have as much detail as I want to really make this area work as well as it should.
Can I suggest...
You're going to anyway.
I am. The quad to the right of the vertex you got selected.
Mm-hmm.
If you in fact took the vertex opposite that and essentially merged at center, you just kind of see actually
Like these?
Or at least made them into 2 triangles. I think merging at center, yeah. No, that
you mean split them?
Yeah, and then
Wow, that's some really odd pulling that you generally don't see very much. Let me try this. Let me do it kind of the other way. Nuke out the faces.
Yeah.
And fill this way, and fill this way, and see if we still get that really weird pulling. Yeah, thank you, beta level tools. Now, what we could do... I mean, are you saying you kind of wanted to have a triangle here?
Well, no, the upper one I would quadify in towards the center. Yeah. And then the lower one...
Well, see, what I was going to do is run this up the back. And we may be thinking the same thing, I'm not sure. And just dissolve that. Now, am I thinking the same thing you were thinking, Gavin?
I don't think you're thinking exactly the same thing I think I was thinking. I was just going to split that edge that you nuked and run it towards the centered line of the model.
All right, I want to give everybody a chance to see what it is you're talking about, but first I kind of have to know
how badly this is going to go wrong.
You mean
that edge?
You mean this?
Out of a yeah.
Oh God, bless the knife tool. It's funny, you get online, you actually see people starting to ask for the knife tool to be able to be terminated via right click. I'm like, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I do that like at least once or twice per modeling session now. Now let's see here. If I could probably do the same thing or something similar here to run that back over to the groin area.
I'm not convinced that was.
It's not a bad way to go. It's really not. I don't have a problem with that really at all. I think any problem that may be arising from it could just be handled by tweaking. It's just you got to watch out on these great big flat surfaces. Having one of these, because it's just way too easy to start getting some weird lumps or dimples from it. I'm not saying it was a bad idea, but you know.
It also doesn't particularly help below either.
Well,
so.
Yeah, there's ways that could be. Yeah, adds more details but solves the problem. I think really all the main thing is doing.
I think actually all this does is add more detail.
Yeah, I think it's exacerbating one problem while solving another.
Yeah, that idea sucks. You should never have let me.
Well, at least I wanted people to know kind of what you were talking about. The biggest problem I have with that is come animation time. That's such a flexible area that keeping that from getting out of whack. I just feel like if you had any sort of exaggerated pose with the leg, you're going to see a bump pop out.
But again, I suppose, see, we set all this up beforehand. He said, at exactly this minute, I've got to make a badge. But no, I mean, this is the process that you go through, and it just happens that if you've got two people...
Yeah, well, no two people are going to model alike anyway.
But that didn't work at all.
No,
what was your thinking then?
Well, there's a couple of different ways we could go about it. I mean, I still don't have a problem with trying to redirect detail in toward the center line. I think that does save you a lot of hassle more often than not. You also could just be considering something a little too soon. For instance, we can terminate it toward the center line higher up on the back and get away from a heavily animated area like the glutes, and it works just fine. So if we were to take like this edge and dissolve it out, actually I could take several different edges here and kind of dissolve them, start to reroute detail maybe across the top of the thigh and whatnot. But let's see here. Maybe pull these in, keep them kind of low, and it looks like I have some extra edges here. I probably should have made sure to dissolve with vertices, but that's okay. We'll take them out after the fact. So we'll pull all of this stuff kind of down low, at least to get us started. We've got one edge here that needs to go someplace. We've got edges all up here. Let me see just real quick about this. And if I was to really pull these down and kind of flatten them out, they can all start to sort of move up. So let me get my knife tool, and we can cut that up. I'll just continue it here in just a moment. That can be centralized. We can cut that up. Of course, we have no cross detail right now, but I do want to double check and see where we go across the front. And do we? Hang on. We kind of do. We got a really wacky spiral that would take place here. So this idea isn't going to work that well either. It's funny too, because like seriously, on the other version of this model, I don't know why, but the detail just didn't seem to have any of these.
It just worked, didn't it?
It just worked, and it's one of those things where it's like, well, I did it once like that, and it just made sense at the time. So why is it suddenly being, what it is right now? But let me just go ahead and keep on moving. You keep wanting to say something again, Gavin, and then you keep not saying it.
Well, actually, in that case, it was because I'm struggling to come up with a good answer.
Okay.
Well, you just suggesting yeah, that'd work.
You don't even know what I'm about to do.
I could guess.
Yeah, you probably can. Alright, so if I just pull this out real quick, and let's say I am going to work with the base restriction of just having what? What do I have here? I have these 3 edges. I should be able to make a nice looking backside in that many edges. So let's just start there, and then I'll start connecting from that point. This is what happens when you start doing unscripted models, really. So let's extrude this out, and that'll give us one nice edge across the back. And let's just go ahead and let's just shape that right away. So that needs to flow. That's looking pretty good. That's looking pretty good. Okay. Now, back over to edges. Extrude out again. Same thing. We need to just kind of keep on shaping. So let's switch over to vertices. Pull this in. Let's jump back over to the side view. So that can start to curve back in a little bit. Okay, and if we take a look here, let's go ahead and start shaping this. All right. And that gives us not only nice curvature, but lots of nice control to see where that curvature is going to go. And that's what we need probably more than just about anything. Let me see here with the splits we've got running down the groin. Let me put smooth away for a minute so I can see a few more of those. From these 2 edges, if we were to kind of go all the way out there to halfway along the gluteus, then we could from here, we could go straight to here and just fill that, and straight to here and just fill that as well. May not be a bad idea to get that sort of split just for one more level of control. Yes, Gavin?
Oh, I think, yeah, if you just... Oh, I see, you're going across that way.
And even these up a little bit. And go to edges and fill that in. And let's see. When you do splits like that latest one, do you keep in mind where you want to terminate the seam? This one? Right off the top of my head, no, I didn't. I just realized I need more control right here in this area, and the need for control is not going to go away. So basically what I tell myself is, well, that's what I need. That's what I'm going to have to give myself one way or another. Now, go ahead, Gavin.
No, again, I'm not sure of whether it's going to work or not, what I was going to say.
Oh.
So I then stopped.
Ah, I see. Alright, well, let me jump over here to the front view. And let me see if I can start arranging some detail, because I've still got that hole back there in the back, and I feel like I can start working some of this stuff down and forming some of the hip from what I've got here. So all of this stuff can just be pulled down. Even insofar as pulling this stuff down even farther, because I mean I've got these details here, these vertices, these can all be used to start getting the shape of the thighs in place very nicely. Alright. So if I pull... Oh, I must be reaching through. I don't necessarily want to do that. So if I pull this guy back... It seems like I can now grab vertices, grab these edges here. Let's just try an extrusion. And the cool thing is now, if I need to remove any edges in the leg, I mean, I just flat out can. It doesn't really make any difference right now, because it just terminates halfway down the knee anyway. No edges could be ripped. That's because for some reason I hit V when I want to hit Alt-M.
Have you ever modelled or considered modelling a character in what would be a sitting position, leg-wise?
Model the character in a sitting position?
Well, it seems to me that's the more relaxed position. This is a fully extended position, hence the creasing around the buttock.
I guess it would depend...
At the top of the thigh.
I guess it would depend on if I ever felt that the character would be standing, because then... it depends on how much what the character's going to be doing. If they're just going to be sitting most of the time, that's fine. If they're not going to be sitting most of the time, then I feel like you're going to be fighting that look in the geometry.
I was thinking just kind of the opposite, actually, in terms of that being more of a midpoint of motion with the leg half.
I have no idea what you're trying to say, man. I'm really sorry.
That's all right. It's not known for my clarity of explanation. Yeah.
Basically, what I'm dealing with here are the beginnings of spirals, because they start off here at the center line of the back of the body, and they move down toward the thigh, and they can't really continue without some form of termination. Gavin Wick is talking to you. He asked, do you mean like the buttocks in the back of the thigh not creasing when a person is sitting?
Yeah. There needs to be a certain level of flaccidity in the skin in order to allow the stretching required to touch your toes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, I see kind of what you're getting at. Which is what causes that crease between the buttocks and the thigh when you're in a standing position. So, and it suddenly occurred to me to wonder whether that halfway position was in a sitting.
It's like, I don't know, it's an interesting argument. I don't think it would work out too well for an animated character, but I mean, it's one of those things where, give it a shot, see what you get. And I've gone and I've done it again. I've created geometry that I just don't like. And I've made a lot of it, so, I mean, I could apologize, but I wouldn't really be all that sorry. It's just part of the process.
You're going to go off and do some more modelling when you've finished with this one.
I mean, that's...
Actually, do you not have... You've got a Maya class tonight, haven't you?
I do.
Yes.
So, let me see here. Let me just come up with another approach. So I'll just keep tackling it. It's interesting because I usually don't have any problem slapping these together ever, and I'm wondering, like, what have I changed? What has gone awry in the form here that would cause me to have these problems just this time, as opposed to any other time that I make a model? So, in its way, this is kind of an interesting little exercise. Okay, let me try something here. Let's let me do an extrusion. Well, from this point, what do we got in terms of our geometry? Let me go to the front view. Let me jump over here. I'm actually going to pull these guys down a little bit further for now. Or I believe it's actually farther. And a bit of excess edgery here. I'm going to dissolve, hit T, kill those verts, go to vertices. No, that's seriously, I wasn't kidding. I want to go to vertices.
It feels to me that I think is, yeah, the row above that wants to come down to about where that one is.
Well, that's kind of what I'm working on, I think. I think I'm in, like, without trying to, I'm adding a lot more detail here than I absolutely need, and I've been fighting that since the beginning. And it may be...
It's my influence. I'll shut up.
It may be that when I did the other version of the model, because I made a different point then, or at least it felt different at the time, to just try not to add any detail I didn't absolutely need. And so we have 11 edges here. I mean, I can go ahead and make that 10, but I'd have to argue my way out of one of these. What I could probably do is pull this one back, pull this one down, because we probably don't need too terribly much flexibility right there, and then just remove this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking the opposite option would be to lose it in the back of the knee.
But yeah, well, we're going to already be losing a little bit in the front anyway. Okay, so these should line up at this point. So we've got 10 edges and 10 edges. And we'll probably have to do a little bit of wiggling to get stuff to really, really match, but let's just grab two that look like they're pretty close, and let's just connect them. And I think we should be well on our way, finally. And I think you will find, as you get deeper into modeling, that you'll just have these instances every now and then, and you'll be laughing about it with all your modeling friends. Be like, yeah, man, this one model, man, for whatever reason, I just couldn't get the flow of the hips to do what I wanted it to do right when I wanted it to do it.
I think that's why the human models is that big. It's one of those big modeling landmarks.
Yeah, probably.
Getting through it, because there's so many sort of little awkwardnesses.
All right, well, I think we fixed the problem now, because, I mean, really, it's just take these vertices, and we can use this next row to shape out kind of the underside of the bottom, or may even use this one and let this one just give us a little bit more rounding. So we've got a lot of options now. We're basically on our way at this point. And turn on your smooth, and you can carefully look for any odd-shaped dimples. You can space things out, but the point is we've got what we needed at this stage. Would I normally have an edge loop that runs up the groin and around the hip bone? I hate using for like terms like normally, but I find that doing that sort of leotard type of shape does kind of help with your flow and with kind of understanding of where things are going to end up being placed. Oh, okay. can curve down. Yeah, we're pretty much right where we want to be now. So I'm much more satisfied. The little odd frustrations are more or less gone, which is good.
Did you want to take another? You've been going another hour.
No, I just want to go ahead and kind of get this closed out. So we'll just run over a little bit today, which that's not the end of the world.
That's cool. I just, you know me, I'll sit here and suddenly realise it's the next day.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, and I would like to make the point publicly that I find it irritating being patronised by the AI of a computer game into taking a break from playing the computer game.
Ah, okay, yeah, I know of a few
of
games that do that. Nintendo's really good about it, and the Metal Gear Solid series was always kind of funny about it.
It's one of those things where I think it's probably indicative more than anything of the fact that somebody somewhere tried to sue someone, citing that as being a reason that they did something.
Yeah.
And so it's now like a label on hairdryers telling you not to use them in the shower.
Yeah, because somebody thought they could dry their hair while showering and it would speed up their morning routine. Yeah, well, it's called natural selection. You'll never get away from it.
We'll just legislate it out of existence.
Okay, so that's a really good start, and we're probably going to have a phase of body tweaking at some point, so let's go ahead and start getting our way down the rest of the body. We've got some detail, more detail toward the back of the knee than we do toward the front, which, I mean, that's fine by me, but we are going to have to terminate this stuff somewhere. Now, one thing we can do when it comes down, like if you have to go from 10 to 8, there's all kinds of ways to do a mid-level termination, which is what I'm going to do. You don't have to run it all the way down. But I mean, if you're working with a model like this and you're like, well, I mean, I really could use some more detail in here, don't be afraid of that sort of thing. It probably won't kill you. Because you could run an edge, I don't know, you'd probably find something that ran down the center line of the body and ended up, you'd probably find a way to route it into the groin area, and then it would, kind of self-terminate. That's always a neat trick when you can accomplish that. In the meantime, however, let us do a bit of this. Let's go over to the front view, and let's get the rest of the leg shaped out. Go ahead and turn off smoothing. And you can see we got some really wacky things going on here with the topology that I don't care for. So we'll clean those up. Get a nice smooth flow across the leg. Hit Control R. We'll go about halfway down the leg. And I'll scale that out slightly. Jump over to the side view. Obviously we have some adjustment to make. I'm going to keep the smooth in mind here because I don't plan on adding too many more vertical edges. So we'll slide this back and then scale it out like so, and that starts to line up pretty well. Kind of handle the rounding here. These could probably be pulled forward a little bit more. So just, again, sort of averaging vertex locations a little bit. And getting rid of odd shapes, like here. Let's try just running this to sphere, so Alt-Shift-S, and that just sort of rounds things out. It's kind of it's not quite as good as just averaging out vertex locations, but it can really help.
It can be quite a good sort of reset.
Yeah, it's like
when you've made a complete mess of something before you pull it around and then go, oh no, that's bad.
Yeah, I have a weird shape here that I need to make unweird, so to sphere really helps with that.
They should totally change the name of that tool. Or they'd have to change the keyboard shortcut.
Maybe.
For unwrapping. I like the idea of having an unweird tool.
Yeah, this is just weird, and I don't want it to be weird anymore. So, So let me put another edge about midway here, and I feel like a pretty sound move would be to grab faces here on the inside and just kind of pulling these out a little bit. Keep my geometry from getting too terribly overlapped. Okay, and that's lining up pretty well. Now, at the front of the knees, I'm going to pull this up over the top of the kneecap. And to kind of help us terminate these extra edges, let's see here, if we grab these two faces, we can extrude them up and then scale them in a little bit. And we've essentially just earned ourselves 2 free extra edges to attach into. So if we wanted to do that, we could. I would just go ahead and get this lower edge kind of aligned with the kneecap as well. So let me turn off smooth. Let's go over to wireframe and switch to vertices. And we'll just kind of start lining these up a little better than they are. So we can spread these out. And see, this is still a quad.
Have you got a matching count there at the moment? I've lost
10
that.
and, well, that's not going to give me a nice edge loop. Or is it? Almost. 10 and 10, so yeah, I should.
Cool.
So we can just connect here and connect here, and you see where that extra little extrusion just basically allowed me to terminate that extra set of edges.
Essentially, you've forced one of the edges to loop back on itself, back up the body, like a big U shape.
Exactly.
It's a really handy. The more and more I find them actually planning out those positions as a sort of guiding points.
Well, in this case, it's going to help actually, because I can use it to create some nice creasing at the back of the knee.
I think I saw it in some video on YouTube specifically for knees and elbows, a way of doing them directed towards animation.
Right.
And well, it went further than that. It kind of did the opposite on the inside.
Right.
So you'd end up with yeah, it was quite a nice, clever. That for me is the joy of modelling, because most of it is just pulling verts about. When you find a nice, really elegant solution to a piece of topology.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. And I mean, I think that's one of those things where if you don't find it fun, then it's possible that modeling is just not your game.
Yeah. It's all those people who want to make games without learning sort of programming concepts.
No. I talk to them every day.
You kind of have to. Yeah.
I talk to them each and every day. Some folks are like, well, programming's not my thing. I just want to make games. And I have to stop and, I mean, just be like, what? How do I respond to this? Where do I even go? Where do I begin, really? Now, let's see here. I don't want to run any more extra edges than I absolutely need to, but if I pull this up and let this kind of go up over the knee and then up over the thigh, and I know that I'll have to clean it up in the front view. I'm going to take that as red. Because I know also that I need this. I've got to have this. So really it's just, once it's decided that must be there, it's do what you got to do to make the rest of it just happen. Okay, also, and this is just a tip, because I've run into it before, and if you haven't, and you never do, good. If you do, you will think back to this video and go like, oh yeah, Zach warned me this would happen one day in my life. Do your best to remember what side of the knee is the front, or what side of the leg is the front, because I have just...
I was wondering why you did that, and I thought, we've been here for hours, I'm not going to question you again on why on earth did you put that in the back?
Yeah. Oh, no. Why'd I put this at the back?
Yeah, that's what I was expecting to see that at the front. There was a point where you suddenly went into 3D and I went, oh, I thought that was the front.
No. I mean, I definitely, I meant to put this at the back. I could have put it at the front. I mean, I could move it right now and put it at the front. But, no. What I'm getting at is it's really easy because you spend so much time zoomed in here. And if you don't have your mirror on for any reason, and I have actually built knees like slightly on the inside of the leg, just because I wasn't paying attention and I spent so much time zoomed in.
Rotated by one.
Yeah, like off by one, and you end up just having to move the vertices around. No, for a really simple kneecap, just a couple of edge loops are really all you're going to need. And to get the detail to look nice and make a good transition down into the calf, we really kind of need to take a break from this and go ahead and get some general shape for the calf in place. So that's what I'm going to do.
She has got some serious calf muscle.
Well, she does. She does, really. Just overall, really overly curvaceous. Like everywhere. So, let's see. Let me turn... Well, we can go ahead and leave that on for just a minute. Scale this in for just a little bit. Slide that back. And then it's just, it's just vertices. But see, that gives you, even that just gives you enough to get started.
And actually the legs are a good example of an area. The arms, not so much, I find. But certainly the legs, you get this big disparity with them. You've got lots of geometry around the crotch area. And then, usually a couple of edge loops for the thigh and a couple of edge loops for the shin.
Right.
Loads of geometry at the knee, loads of geometry at the ankle.
Right. Which is, it's kind of nice because there's not much motion here at the center of the leg,
Yeah, it can make for nice clean models, but equally you get those points in between, like around the groin, and where you end up pulling verts around for hours trying to make the two different levels. It's a lot like with UV layouts,
right?
And getting the balance of sizes. Was it you or Bill who did that on Max with the UV layout?
I think it depends on which project you're
section. It's probably the F14 I was thinking of.
I
know you did the textures, but I don't know if you did
But I don't remember. It could have been Bill. It's just been so long, it all kind of blurs together for me. Put a little more weight up here toward the front.
Sorry, I've gone full-on modelling on the fly mode now, really.
That's fine. That's kind of what I've been doing as well. But you can see how we kind of spread this detail out, take a look at the smooth and see how that's coming along. We could pull this out and keep that from being too much of an outward dimple. But, I mean, over here in the one that has no geometry on top, we have a very nice, simple knee bump. Which, I mean, that's really all you need. And the key to making it is, you see how we come together here, and then we just use these 4 vertices. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you see, we pinch in at the top and bottom and let those two give it some widening. And then this one in the middle controls the overall shape of the kneecap. And I just find that between those, for a simple knee, you've really got everything you really need. You can take what's on the underside and you can push it up to create some more dimpling. There's a lot of variety that can be had from just those few vertices. And really all of this was just so that we could terminate a few more edges. So that should all work just fine.
And one thing I've noticed, if you kind of think that everything's matching up in the image planes, but it just doesn't quite feel right.
Do it feels
oftentimes,
right.
Well, do what feels right, but if you can't quite work out why it doesn't feel right, look for absolute symmetry that possibly shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
The human legs are very strange shape when you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, like, here's an example. I'm kind of...
It waves in and out all the way down.
Yeah, here's a really nice example that I was already kind of working on, is that generally, like, I find the outside of the calf appears to be higher than the inside. So a lot of times I'll go ahead and make my detail have that same slant to it. So I'll pull it a little lower on the inside, and usually I get nicer results. I'll get another edge in here, and we'll just scale this in.
See, I'm just standing up now with my trouser rolled up looking, but the center line of my kneecap is about in line with the inside of my ankle. You know, the sort of center lines that you think of when you're modelling can be... I seem to recall some study, I was probably watching Horizon or something, they were talking about the human face and the fact, you know, the well-known thing about the fact that it's very unsymmetrical. And that after... Because you tend to model with symmetry modifiers on,
right,
it's important to remember at the end to go back, particularly with faces,
and yeah, break some things,
and break some stuff.
Yeah, break some symmetry.
Just make sure you UV layout before you do that, or you'll just hate yourself.
Yeah.
Or if you don't, then you've just created twice as much work for yourself.
It looks like we could pull this out. We can slide this back and this back so we don't get quite so much of a point there at the inside of the calf. As a matter of fact, what I'd probably do is pull these back in and forward and let some of that thickness we're seeing be handled more by the back of the calf than the front, which makes a lot more sense, really. And, I mean, some tweaks here and there around. We're pretty much getting to a nice wrapping point, I think. And we can pull these out, and you can see and make instant ankle bones. I would probably have one more edge loop right in here just to kind of help anchor the fact that we just made those ankle bones. And even just a little bit of scaling there will generally take care of everything we needed.
This is the thing, a lot of this will come down to taste.
I think so.
Personal taste.
I think so.
Yeah.
And really, I think with that, we're at a really nice stopping point. I mean, barring any full body edits that we may want to do later on, and we probably will. But, I mean, just as a quick recap, we built a shoe. We ran it up quite a ways, but not all the way up to the hip and where that's going to attach. And we sort of took a break from that and revisited the torso area. This has been greatly simplified over what we had before. And it did actually take me a couple of attempts to get exactly what I was looking for out of that shape, which was a really good simplicity of vertices that, I'll be honest, at first I just wasn't seeing and just had to kind of keep tweaking and hammering at until I got what I wanted. But now I'm really satisfied with what we've got. And I think we got something that's going to animate pretty well. So, in terms of a simple shape. And then, I mean, really, you know, a leg is not so different than an arm. You know, you're going to do a tube-like extrusion, add some edge loops, and adjust things over and over and over until you're happy with what you're looking at. And that's really all there is to making a pretty good-looking leg. It's very much, I found it's the same thing as making a decent-looking arm. So that is going to wrap up today's lecture. Of course, your homework for today, for this week, is going to be to create a foot and a leg of your own and get those attached in. So when you're finished, you should essentially have what I have here, which is a headless character, more or less. And that will wrap everything up if there are no further questions, and I will catch you all next week. So thank you all very much for hanging out, and for those of you who are watching this on video, thank you very much for following along, and I will see you all later. Take care.
Bye, guys.